Hello everyone, welcome to the webinar, Laying the Groundwork for Success with Katana, and thank you for joining. My name is Elise, I am part of Foundry's marketing team and will be your virtual host. Today, it's my pleasure to introduce Sony Pictures Imageworks Senior Technical Trainer, Maribeth Glass and Greg Berridge, Manager of Training, Artistic Development, and Academic Outreach. Maribeth will present how Sony trains their artists to use Katana, and Greg will join our live Q&A. We're also joined by Adele Paleska, Foundry's Senior Technical Creator, who will be talking about the resources available on Foundry Learn, and Terry Ryasat, Foundry's Global Head of Creative Services, who will be moderating the Q&A. If you have any questions that you'd like to ask our speakers, please add them into the Questions tab on the right-hand side of the screen. There you'll also see the chat tab, so feel free to say hello and let us know where you're joining from. Today's webinar is part of Foundry's Greater Virtual Event Series, which we started in March of 2020. We have all of our webinars available for on-demand viewing, and a few of our recent webinars include The Power of Learning Katana Lighting Katana for Lighting, which was presented by Sony Pictures Imageworks Senior Lighting and Look Dev TD, Taeyoung Kim, in the preview of Mari 5.0 and Katana 5.0. Next, we'll be joining View Conference and Spark Animation. During View, we'll be presenting a Katana workshop on how to show artists how they can set up a template for multi-shot lighting to go to working in the context of a new composite. That workshop will be on October 18th, and on October 19th, Peter Averston of Meshman Studios will talk about how you can unlock creativity with Mari's node graph-based texture painting. For Spark Animation, Foundry will be presenting a digital cinematography panel, and our guest speakers will be from Bardell, Atomic Cartoons, Mainframe, and DNEG. Spark Animation will be live October 28th through November 7th, and our session will be available on demand for the duration of the event. Also, if you have any feedback or would like to participate in Foundry's virtual event program, please feel free to reach out to us at virtual.events@foundry.com. I'd also like to take this opportunity to encourage you to stay up to date with Foundry by checking out our Insights Hub, where you can find articles and case studies, subscribing to our quarterly newsletter, and following us on social media. And finally, I'd like to thank Sony Pictures Imageworks for joining our series twice to share their insight, and to thank the other studios, artists, and partners that have participated and supported Foundry's virtual event series. So without further ado, we'll move on to the main event. The next part has been pre-recorded for streaming quality purposes, but we'll all be here with you in the chat and come back for the live Q&A. I hope that you enjoyed today's webinar and stay tuned for more to come.
Hi, I'm Maribeth, and I'm the Senior Trainer at Sony. I'm here to go over a brief introduction of how we conduct Katana training here at Sony. Sony has a pretty unique pipeline. Not only do we use Katana for our lighting, but we also use Katana for our effects and our environment teams. When new hires join us, we evaluate how well they know Katana. And if they've never used Katana before, we do take them through the Katana basics. We'll learn the interface and how to interact with the software in general. Once we cover that, we jump right into a template that's related to the department that they're in. So that might be a lighting template, an environment template, or an effects template. And we'll take them step by step by step through each part of the template to get them familiar with what they're going to be doing once they join the show. Every artist typically will go through about a week of training. And not only will we teach them Katana during that week, but we're also going to teach them some of the proprietary tools that Sony uses pretty frequently. That week of training really helps take some of the pressure off the artist and the shows and makes everybody feel a little bit more comfortable before they're actually responsible for those deadlines and getting things out the door to their clients. We found that particularly with this new work from home environment, training has become invaluable. Artists can no longer look to their left or look to their right and ask questions. So having someone like a training department to be able to ask any questions that they have and cater those questions specific to their department has been really important for making them feel welcome into the studio and making them feel comfortable with what they're actually going to be accomplishing on the shows. So today we're going to actually go through one of our lighting templates step by step, and that's what we're going to focus on, and we'll take you through that. Hope you enjoy.
When artists first start at Sony, we begin by evaluating their comfort level in Katana. So an example of that might be a lot of other studios will use Katana for their lighting purposes, but we also use Katana for environment and our effects artist, which is not as commonly used elsewhere. So we try to take that into account when we start training people in Katana. So if you're coming from a studio that may not be familiar with that, we will start with the basic levels of Katana and teach the artist based on their individual comfort levels. For artists that are familiar with Katana, so on the lighting side of things, we go ahead and actually just jump into a basic template. And this particular template comes from our Hotel Transylvania short that we did recently. And it kind of just showcases a very simplified version of what artists might see when they join a show. So for our animated shows in particular, we focus quite a lot on doing what we call sequence lighting. And when we do sequence lighting, we divide up one sequence into little pieces so we can light each section and each piece separately. These may be all of our close-up shots, these may be all of our wide shots, and these may be all of our mid shots. Or we might divide it in a way where it's based on location. So if the single sequence is both in interior shots and exterior shots, we might light them separately like that. So that's how our key lighters actually start. And when we train our shot lighters, we train them on something that's pretty simplified, but most sequences will have quite a significant amount of variations and variables to think about, but we try to start simple. So the first thing that we go over up here at the top is our shot boss node. In order to manage multiple shots in one Katana script, we can go into shot boss, and this is where we can right click and add shots from a sequence or add individual shots. So this is how we can load multiple shots into one Katana script. And from here, we can control what shot we want to look at. And when we right click and say set current shot, that's going to bring in the appropriate assets for that particular shot, in this case TRN 530. It's also going to change our frame range, our camera, and bring in everything that we need. And the way that we control that a little bit further down our tree is through switch nodes. So when we do right click and say set current shot, any switch nodes that are based on what shot we're looking at will switch and then look at our particular lighting scenario for that shot as well. If we go back up to shot boss and I say set current shot to TRN 530, you'll see in my viewer everything's changed. I have the geometry for the different shots, and if I were to render this, I would see how the lighting would be different as well for this particular shot versus this was 530 that or 550 that we were looking at just now. So we do still utilize the Importomatic, but it is wrapped up in this one tool for shot boss. And as we go down our tree, we train artists on how everything comes together. So our typical flow of information or order of operations, if you want to look at things like that, would be this is where we bring in our geometry, our materials. If we add any additional cameras, we want to do that here. In this particular section of our template is where we make our collections. So this is where most key lighters and leads will go in and define which geometry is in which passes. So a lot of times the base passes will create our environment, your character pass, and any effects passes. So they will make collections based on that, and we will reference those collections later to create our individual render passes down below. Then we get to what we call our pre-override section. So a lot of times there are things that are changing on the show constantly. We can never say that something is going to be the same every show, every shot. So we do utilize live groups within our templates, and that's exactly what this pre-overrides node here is. These live groups end up being controlled by our key lighters or our leads. And anything that changes midway through the sequence or midway through the shot that needs to make its way to our artist, they will put those changes in these live groups, and the artist should get those changes automatically. So that makes it much easier to sort of organize things in the long run. We have a pre-overrides group, which is anything that needs to be done before our look file manager, before those shaders get assigned. Anything that needs to happen before then, we put in our pre-overrides group. So that's how our pre-overrides section works. We also have a post-override section down below. So you'll see we have a post-override section, and that's anything that needs to happen after our look file manager. So after our shaders get assigned, anything that we need to do sequence-wise, we'll put in our post-overrides group, or the key lighters will put in our post-overrides group. So that's a very easy way for our key lighters and leads to push updates to our artists and kind of have things work universally. Then we get to our lighting section. So there is a sequence lighting live group as well with this folder and the lightning bolt. And this varies quite a lot depending on the show and depending who might be key lighting. So sometimes in these groups, there's a lot happening. We do all of our lighting in there. And sometimes you'll see we do have the live group, but we also have a section for each one of our shots that we have in this template. So this group of nodes is going to be dealing with the lighting for TRN 530. This group is dealing with the lighting for 550, and this group is dealing with the lighting for 615. And controlling all of that is a switch node at the bottom. So we have a variable switch node at the bottom that is based on what shot we are currently looking at. So as we switch our shots, if we switch something to 615, for example, this variable will look at this SP shot variable because it's defined here. And that's going to guide this switch node as to which tree it's going to be looking at for the lighting. And we can use these variable switches anywhere. We also use variable enabled groups as well. A lot of times when we're setting up key lighting, the key lighters will use variable switches when it comes to organizing their lighting groups like this, because it's a much more visual way of understanding which group they're using. Where variable enabled groups are a little bit more hidden. So the key lighters will use this for kind of their main lighting scenario, and they will have this giant switch node so you can kind of tell where this is looking at. We like to view from this node and use dim nodes not contributing to viewed node quite a lot, so we know exactly what we're looking at. It's very helpful to train on those individual tools. And it gives us a more visual representation of what's actually happening in the script when we turn on this dim nodes not contributing to viewed node. And you can see the difference. So these switch nodes will control which lighting scenario we look at. And then we have sections for shot tweaks. I'm going to view down below. This is typically anything that needs a material edit or a material override. Quite often these are managed by the key lighters mostly, and then the shot lighters, which kind of final our shots, will go in and change anything as needed. And then we have our quality settings. So this is something that's really helpful for new artists in particular, because we do use Arnold here at Sony. And if you're not used to Arnold or not familiar with Arnold, some of the settings can be quite overwhelming, and we obviously want to make our renders as optimized as possible. So we do have something called a render quality selector here at Sony. And as we're training new artists, this can be extremely helpful for them to sort of look at what a low, medium, and high render, what those settings might be, like your Arnold global settings, to get an idea of how to control Arnold. And then we do have a separate class for Arnold for new hires as well. so they can feel comfortable with that. So for training new artists, we do go through this template, and usually we do give homework as well. So every day there's a little bit of homework. I might ask artists to add lights. I might ask artists to change materials. Sometimes we come up with some really fun materials for Dracula or the zombie, and we play around a little bit. So at the end of the week, I do ask artists to come through the template. We typically will go through and add some lights. We might go through and change some materials. We will come down to the bottom of our tree and practice how to separate our layers as well. So in training, we will separate our passes. We'll create a zombie pass and we'll create a drac pass, so they can get an overview and an example of how that works. And then we go through the rendering process. So the rendering process for animated shows, we use something called Shot Butler. So if I add a new panel called Shot Butler, this comes up, and this is how we can render multiple shots from one Katana script. So these are all of our layers that are created at the bottom: our environment, our character, eye highlight passes, any effects passes, environment, Atmo, those kinds of things. And these are each individual shot that I have listed in my shot boss node. So I can turn on or off entire shots. And I can also say, if I decide for 530, I don't need a smooth wall pass, I can just turn that off, or I can right click and say remove, and it will completely remove that pass for that particular shot. There's lots of variations of how we can control this. There's lots of variations of how we can use this. We can send one shot, all shots. It's very helpful and organizational tool for our key lighters, and then when it gets to shot lighting, they can inherit what the key lighters have set up, and it makes it much smoother process for them as well, how to send things to the farm. So I do have artists go ahead and render. We set a particular frame range, and then they will submit their passes to the farm. So once we've gone through training with the artist, they should be learning how to bring in our assets, how to organize our assets with collections, how the look file manager and that relationship with the look file manager and our shaders through the Katana look file actually works. We have a section of lighting, so we go through all of the Arnold lights that we create here at Sony. We do have a particular gaffer node that we use here. So we don't use the standard gaffer 3. We use gaff 4. So it is a Sony special node that we have, and it just allows us to have some more flexibility with our Arnold shading. And we can still manipulate materials, we can still inherit the incoming scene and edit our lighting that way, but we do go through each individual light and go through the material parameters with all of our new hires and talk about some of the very specific things that we have. Some of the nice things that we have here at Sony, for example, if you open physical parameters, we do have an option for color maps, and we've got a really nice library that they've organized for us. So that's an additional panel we can create if we go to the library panel that allows us to use specific kind of textures for our lights. So instead of having a light have an exposure, in this case of 20 universally across the entire light, it allows us to kind of break that up a little bit by using one of these maps. So I can come to the source and change this to light textures, for example. And these are some of just the generic examples that we have, and they're very easy to use for all of our artists to just click and drag them over, and we'll get that visualization in our Hydra viewer as well. So the gaff 4 is a bit of a Sony special, and we can create lights, and it allows us to add any lights that we want, specifically our Arnold shader lights. Once we've worked through our template with the artist. We've come in, we've loaded our shots, we've organized our shots with collections. We've gone through the lighting process, what you might see in those live groups, what you would control as a shot lighter, and how you would control those switches. We go through some of the material edits and changes that they might make that are pretty common on a shot-to-shot basis. And then we go through all of our Arnold specifics. So we do have this render quality selector where they can choose either low, medium, and high. And that will work a significant amount of the time. But there are always occasions where something's going to be a little bit noisier than you prefer. So the artists do go through Arnold training as well, just so they can learn how to troubleshoot their samples and what parameters to change in order to make their Arnold renders more efficient and less noisy. And then we go through organizing all of their passes at the end as well. And lastly, through Shot Butler, this is how we're able to render multiple shots from one Katana script. And that's it. That's a bit of an overview of what we take some of our newer lighters through. And from here, we'll render out our passes and then take them directly into Nuke and go through the comping process for them as well.
We hope you enjoyed the bit of insight into how we train Katana here at Sony. As you can imagine, maintaining up-to-date information and templates for every department does come with its challenges. Our training team is in constant communication with our environments teams, our effects teams, our lighting teams, and with our shows, and even the development team to make sure our new hires are as aware and as up-to-date as possible. With such a diverse slate of shows, each having their unique technology needs, both live action and animation, we even occasionally create specific Katana training catering towards each of those shows and towards each of their individual technology needs. We hope this has given you a good overview as to what new hires can expect from our Katana training program here at Imageworks, and we hope to see you soon.
Hi, I'm Adele, and I'm here to give a quick overview of our Learn site and the content we produce to help you become a Katana Pro. On our Learn site, we host a range of tutorials and documentation on Katana, from beginner tutorials to advanced workflow tutorials and much more. Once a course has been started, your process is tracked, making it easy to pick up from where you left off at any point in your learning journey. The documentation is also a really useful way for understanding why or how things work in Katana, and is always good to have on hand as a reference. Our reference guide can be found on the Learn site, or from within Katana, or on the product page. All our guides are fully searchable, and we write them with the user in mind, making it easier for you guys to find what you're looking for and find it fast. Our content is made by a variety of people as well. While our talented team of creative specialists and product experts are constantly creating new learning material to keep you in the know, we also frequently collaborate with industry experts who are using Katana in the world. As well as our Learn site content, there are also the community forums. The community forums are a really great place to get feedback on your work, as well as host portfolio pieces and just generally have a chat with other users. We also have our support portal, where common questions like how do I load in a plugin or how do I write a launcher script are answered through knowledge-based articles written by a customer support team. We're also super keen on feedback and are always wanting to know how we can improve our content or how it worked for you. There are a couple ways that you guys can get back to us. On the Learn site, we've got a really handy feedback widget where you can tell us what you did or didn't love, or you can email the content team directly at docs@foundry.com. We're always striving to make sure that you guys have the best learning content possible, and we're always open to new ideas on how we can achieve that. So don't be afraid to reach out.
Okay, I think we're ready to move on to the QA session. Fantastic presentation, first of all. It's rare and wonderful to peek into see how Sony sort of treats their workflows, lays out the node graphs, and the thought process behind that. as well as custom tools, which is lovely. And we're just scratching the surface there. So that's a fantastic peek into that. Okay, so we'll move on to some questions. I'll just answer a couple of these general Katana questions first, and then we'll get into some more specific things here. So which render engine do you use with Katana? And Katana is render agnostic, so it works with RenderMan, Arnold, Redshift, V-Ray, and 3Delight. So those are maintained by the render vendor plugin manufacturers. And can Katana handle huge amounts of poly counts, like a huge forest from SpeedTree? And so, yeah, that's one of the reasons that Katana is was invented, essentially, is for those giant scenes. And because it has true deferred loading, you don't need to see every single leaf and twig on those SpeedTree trees. So you can call those geometries up visually in the viewport when you need to. Otherwise, there's no point, as you're lighting, to be able to see all those twigs and leaves in GL as a lighter. So it can definitely handle those poly count size. So what would you consider to be the best resource for training artists in general? Which one works best in your opinion? Written documentation versus video tutorials versus individual memberships and mentorships, which is interesting because we see all of those aspects today. So there is the sort of individual mentoringship if you get hired at Sony and you have that training and you're doing in-person one-on-one, which is probably going to be extremely effective because the focus there and somebody to talk to immediately is a very different experience. And then we see also which Adele showed, which is the written documentation and the video tutorials. And that is also very accessible and something that you can do on your own free time. So it depends on the individual and sort of the options that you have available to you. So Evan asked a question and Greg answered it, but I'll just repeat it out loud for the playback or the recording. So do you at Sony prefer new lighters to have Katana experience when joining the team? And Greg answered, it's great to come in with some knowledge, but we do leave some room for training if we need to ramp you up. A great lighting reel is the key. So focusing on a solid reel definitely will get you in the door. And then when you get hired, if you're not up to speed with Katana, they will focus some time to get you up to speed. Okay. Do you use Katana just for rendering effects from Houdini, or does Katana also have a simulation, particles, fluid, etc.? That's an interesting question. So Katana is not a simulations software. It is it's very specialized for look development and lighting and being able to light multiple shots simultaneously, sequence-based lighting. So that wouldn't necessarily be a focus, but that leads actually to another question. So Maribeth touched on this during the presentation and mentioned that the effects and effects simulations are run through Katana versus a native renderer. So maybe, Greg, if you have some more information on that.
Sure. Yeah. You guys can hear me okay?
Yep.
Checking.
You're good.
Yeah. A lot of studios out there have used other pieces of software as their backbone in terms of how they run, different software through it. At Sony, because we were key in the creation of Katana, that's kind of our backbone piece of software. So pretty much everything that we do communicates and runs through Katana at one point. So yeah, within the effects group, all of our effects artists do get Katana training when they come on board, because they are expected to do some of their lighting, as well as just be able to work with the lighting team on troubleshooting. But it is, I would say it's integral to everything that we do at Imageworks at the moment.
That's very interesting. And then, another question, if we just talk about tech for a second, there's a lot of new features that have come to Katana over the past few releases, Foresight, artist-focused lighting tools, and upcoming ones like Nuke Interop and Foresight Plus. Now, we know studios are generally locked into versions as they roll through production. But just thinking on the future side, how do you guys roll in new technology? Like, how is that implemented into studio?
That's a very long process sometimes. You're exactly right. Like we lock version early on in a project. So trying to roll out new features can be rather difficult. However, I think we have an amazing relationship with everyone over there, and we are knowledgeable about what's coming. So we can go to our, for instance, our councils. So all of our groups have different, like there's a Katana Lighting Council, there's an Effects Council. And when we know that there's change coming, then we start talking about it within those groups, how it affects how we traditionally do things, how that workflow can expand, how it can change, how it can get better. And then we have an entire dev group, a development R&D group that we then work with to figure out that implementation, right? And that, like I said, that's not an overnight kind of switch. We do have to take some time, because making one small change can break 3 things in our pipeline, and we have to be very, very conscious of that. And then once the decision is made to move forward with that integrated into an existing workflow, then we in the training department work with the shows, the council, as well as the development group to roll that training into the new hire experience.
Yes, definitely doesn't sound like something that happens overnight. Very planned and staged rollout for sure.
Exactly.
Okay, we have a question. Does Katana support Python 3? So that is what we're going to be seeing in the next release with Katana 5 as it updates the VFX reference platform. And that's coming soon. And this question is back to you, Greg, is do you use USD? And this is sort of a 2-part. So the first question will answer the second part.
Okay. We are currently not, I believe, using USD, but we are pursuing that in terms of our next generation. We'll put it to you that way. It is you have to constantly evolve. You have to constantly change, see everything that's coming your way. But as I talked about, we have a dev group and they are on the bleeding edge of what's going on out there, and it's tough keeping up with everything, but it's coming. It's definitely coming. Excellent.
Okay, we have a new question here. Is there a bridge between Mari and Katana? For example, make an adjustment in Mari and see the details. I think I just lost that. See the details inside of Katana immediately. So with Mari 5, beta just got released, and we're seeing heavy USD implementation into that. So you will see a shading link, not exactly the way we're talking about here, but a nice handshake between publishing from Mari and into Katana in a nice packaged way, where you can be working in Mari and previewing what the end result will be, and then having that inside of Katana.
Yeah, it's been, sorry, just because I've been working on that release, it's been really smoothed out. So the USD preview surface is now available in Mari, and that can be brought in at any point, which is nice. But also they've brought in a USD export tab to the export manager as well. So it's now really, really easy to get assets with the USD preview surface on it into Katana. So it's getting a lot easier, and there's a lot more coming in the future, but that bridge has started to happen. So yeah.
So bridge between Mari, bridge between Nuke coming up as well. So lots of exciting stuff on the interop side of things. Okay. I'll ask this question here. We'll start this one live. What do you consider is the most challenging part when it comes to channeling all the material produced for an animation movie for a company nowadays that works in another application like Maya and wants to move to Katana for look, dev, and lighting? Is Katana suitable for small companies? I can answer that, but I think, I don't want to be answering. I don't want to be hogging. So if anybody wants to.
Sure, let's hear what you have to say, and then we'll see if I can chime in. It just the sheer volume of information and managing changes. I think that is the key. Bringing content into Katana, I think, is a relatively easy matter. It's just, because I work with a couple of schools in the training of Katana, and the challenge is usually, keeping things updated and having a rock solid pipeline. that it sits in, I think is vital. And that's my take on it. How about you, Terry?
I think you've hit it bang on there as well. We have companies as small as 9 people with one Katana user that do use Katana, and it really is about the type of work that you're doing and how you can be more efficient at it, and that's what Katana brings to the table. So not necessarily about the size of company, but more so the type of work and the type of challenges you're trying to battle and solve. Okay. There's one question here. I'm not sure. Do you use the commercial build of Katana? I'm not quite sure, Dakota, what you mean by that. Hopefully you are. I'm not
I'd
sure.
say I hope so.
Maybe they're asking if we use the commercial build.
Oh, or using a custom built Sony one. Yes.
Okay, that makes sense.
I would say, yeah, we are pretty much on par. I mean, there's a lot of heavy customization that we have done on our end. And there was a time when we had originally started this relationship with the Foundry, when our versions were quite a bit different. But I think, over the last few years, we've pretty much started to run pretty parallel with them. So we obviously do have our little specialties and our little tools that were built on top, but for the most part, yeah, we're running pretty much parallel.
Okay, and Adam asks, what about scripting in Katana? Is it possible to work with Katana without scripting? To work in Sony without scripting knowledge?
Is it possible without scripting knowledge?
Yes.
You know what? I think anything is, well, not anything is possible without scripting knowledge, but scripting just allows you to access what you're doing, access information at a much deeper level, and to do things more effectively and efficiently. In a lot of cases, I know Maribeth, who, just by the way, I want to say congratulations. She's a mom after 6 days.
Oh, awesome.
That's why she did the pre-recording, and she can't be here today. She had her second on Friday morning, so congratulations to her. But I'm pretty sure that she would say, like, she's not a programmer, she's not a scripter, but I think that to work within the program, it's possible, but to maximize your experience and to get the most out of it, I really think that some level of scripting is important.
For sure, especially for those tasks that need to be done over and over. As an artist, I'm same as Maribeth. I'm not a scripter program, but I'm able to utilize Katana Cell and make my life easier in a lot of aspects.
Yeah, I was going to say the same. If you asked me to write something in Python from scratch, I'd probably sit there and cry. But in Katana, it's fine. It's quite easy to pick up, and in the long run, it does make things a lot easier as well. So.
Yeah, I would say in general, Python don't be afraid of it. Don't be scared of Python. I mean, it is based on the comedy group of the 70s and the 60s, and I think everybody should enjoy it in this day and age. So.
Okay, another question. What would be a major advantage of Katana over other packages in terms of lighting and rendering your shot? We did talk about a couple of the other things with true deferred loading, sequence-based lighting being another one. There's Foresight Plus, Nuke Interrupt coming. So there are a lot of unique features to Katana that definitely helps when we're looking at lighting and rendering overall. Maybe we can share some more thoughts on that, but those are the ones that stand out.
Just because I'm like fairly fresh out of uni from the last 2 years or so, I actually found in other packages lighting really difficult because I like node networks. I like seeing how everything connects. So being able to just kind of have everything flattened out like that, I just find it so much easier to wrap my head around. And I just find it so much quicker and nicer to use than doing it any other way, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree. And, definitely can't be hit on enough is the sequence-based lighting, like having all of your shots inside of one file that you're working on. So you're a lighter, you have 15 shots, being able to light them and light them at the same time is a huge efficiency gain. So it is quite lovely when you're working with Katana.
Yeah, it's nice.
Does Katana have its own scripting language, or is it just Python? It's a bit of both. There is something called Cell inside of Katana, which is collection expression language, which I believe is built off of Python as well. But there's also Lua and C++ as a part of there, and Python, of course. All right. So I think the questions are slowing down here. Some very good questions today. We might have a new one there.
Oh. So,
okay.
Yeah.
You can go ahead.
Oh no, I was gonna read it out for you.
yeah. Go ahead.
So, what if I want to update the animation in between the shot lighting in production? Will Katana automatically update the character animation from the Maya file that I saved, or do I have to export the character animation as an Alembic and import it into Katana?
Okay, so you are exporting any animation updates. You do need to change, right? There's no live link between the DCCs in that way, but essentially you'd be utilizing live groups and through cache flushing, or generally utilizing live groups and pointing at versions of the different animation takes, and then you'd be updating inside of Katana. Something to understand about Katana, it's important, is that almost everything in Katana is a reference. So it's great. You're piling nodes on top of it after. It's very non-destructive because you're doing these changes afterwards. And this is the advantage of Katana on the node graph side of things, and why it reads data so quickly in and out. The scene time is measured in seconds with Katana, not minutes.
Mm. There's one. Is it typical that all shots in a sequence are defined in the same Katana file?
I've heard a record of 200 shots in one Katana file, and I don't know if that was done on purpose or just to see if it can be done. But I think that'd be a question for Greg, is how you, if you're a lighter, you're responsible for your sequence, how they split up the number of shots that go into it, or is there any different thought into that?
Yeah, I think with how our lighting is handled, 200 seems, I think we probably beat that. I think that's
oh wow, look at that.
Yeah, nice. I can't necessarily go on record with that, but with our new some of our new systems, Shop Butler specifically, I think we can manage pretty much an entire sequence in one Katana scene file, and then essentially we can dole that out to, because we go through a process now where we have like almost a key lighter who lights a sequence, and then we have that information is distributed amongst multiple other lighters, shot lighters, and then they're all accessing it from the same Katana file, to my knowledge. So they're huge amounts of information stored there.
Great. So just answering Dominique here is, do you have training materials to use the USD Katana Mari, for example? You're going to see that happening with as Mari moves out from beta into full release, and the same thing with Katana 4.5/5. So there'll be a dual release of that. Katana 5 having Python 3, Katana 4.5 staying at the current Python library, but both having the same features other than that.
We do also, on the Learn site for Katana, there is a course on getting your USD plugins into Katana and like using lights and setting up the preview surface as well. It does come with some course files, but off the top of my head, I can't remember if they're USD, but there is some material on USD and Katana at the moment.
So definitely check out Foundry Learn. Any plans for developing scattering or scatter related tools? So not so much about developing the tools for scattering, more about reading the instances in, which you were going to see in Katana 4.5 and 5, being able to visualize your instances directly in the viewport. And if you have parent-child instances within instances, being able to see those as well. So it's, again, more about reading the data in and not so much about the layout. Jeff is asking about the scripting knowledge, which if you may have missed it, Greg did answer that portion of it. So you can always take a look at the playback. Essentially, it helps, but it's not
I was
mandatory.
going to say Cole's Notes version. No, you don't, but yes, you should.
How much do letters at Sony rely on the fast local preview renders, for example, using GPU renderer?
We rely on that a lot, right? With how quickly shots need to move through production, we need to see really, really fast updates on the material. Some of the scenes do get extremely cumbersome, so we have to rely on some of our internal methodologies. But yeah, we use it a lot.
Great. So Ken is asking if I don't remember which question this is tailing off of, but if that's the case, then is the file version per artist with lots of possible merge conflicts in the VCS system?
For me,
I think so. I think that may have been.
That's a very, very long question. If you go back to the main chat, I'm just trying to read through.
Yeah, I'm looking at it. I think it's a follow-on from the, is it typical that all shots in the sequence are defined by the same Katana file? So.
Or artist.
Yeah.
Right?
And then tweaks being possible down the chain. So best case scenario is that the lighter can render as is and just make limited overrides on a shot-by-shot basis in the same file. Yeah, I think that goes along with what I was talking about in terms of we have the key lighter who defines the overall look, and then shot lighters can go in and do individual overrides for on a shot-by-shot basis. I think that answers the same question. And if that's the case, is the file version per artists, lots of possible merge conflicts. Without getting into our pipeline management, that's never a concern for us. We don't have, we never have any issues with overwriting previous files because we do have an overall publishing system which is integrated directly into Katana. We build the pipeline with Katana in mind, so it's an extremely efficient system.
Okay, Rodrigo is asking, how closely do you work with the comp department? In some animation studios, comp and lighting are combined. I was just wondering, how does it work at Sony?
Yeah, in some cases on the animated shows, the lighter used to be the final look, right? Well, we didn't have, for instance, the earlier Hotel Transylvanians, the Transylvania, Cloudy with a Chance of Meatball, balls, they did not have compositors per se, or maybe one for the entire show. That changed dramatically with Into the Spider-Verse. That was one of the first shows that we really started to bring compositors onto the team with us because of the complexities involved. And that has now just become pretty much a norm. So whenever we have any kind of downtime, our compositors are always wanting to cross-train in lighting. Lighters are cross-training in compositing. It's not departmentalized at Sony in that respect. So we don't have, they don't all work within that same group, but they are a very, very close-knit team, right, when they get on the shows. So yeah, I would say they work with each other a lot, and it's just evolving with complexities. So
that's fantastic.
So I think we're running low on time, so we might have time for one more question, if anyone's got one. Or
Doesn't look like it, but that was one just popped up.
Excellent. Do you think a good lighter should lean more towards the artistic side or to the technical side? Which one would be more suited for Sony? Oh, that's a really good question. I like that one.
Yeah, throw the hard one at me last. Balance right now, I think is really, really important, especially when you start a role at a larger studio, you may be more along the lines of a shot lighter, which is working based on what somebody else is defining and augmenting it. But the more you want to mature in your path, the higher you want to go. I definitely, I believe wholeheartedly in having that artistic side. There's some amazing books out there. One that I always recommend, which is called Illuminated Pixels. An ex-Sony staff member worked on that book, and it focuses heavily on the art of lighting. And I cannot recommend that one enough to aspiring artists. So if I got to say it, it's 50-50 for me. You got to be technical. You have to be artistic, and you can't, I don't think you can be lopsided. I think you have to be very equal.
Excellent. Okay, so a couple more questions. I'll answer this one. It's a personal one. Am I related to Ben Kingsley in any way? It's a handsome gentleman. We share the same haircut, but no, I wish I was. Do we consider releasing a PLE version of Katana? I don't think either Adele or I will be able to answer that question here today. There are trials available, of course. Outside of Katana, I'm curious to know what project you've enjoyed the most at Sony, Greg.
Outside of, sorry, what was
outside of Katana?
What
I guess
project?
That's a tough one, unless there was a project where you weren't using Katana on it. But
I mean, I've been at Sony now for going on 9 years, and everything I've ever worked on was in Katana. So I can't remember a world without Katana. I did work at Digital Domain before coming to Sony, and we were using Katana there, which was a very, very different experience. But I mean, my favorite project has been, I think, going back to Edge of Tomorrow. That was one of my favorite Sony projects.
Great movie.
Because I didn't want to go with the cliche answer of the Spider Dude one. So
the answer is there is no life outside of Katana for Greg.
Really no.
Yeah.
Okay, and just has a question about pricing, which we can talk about. You can always reach out to a sales representative for that. I don't think we'll be able to answer that for you today. And I think that about wraps up our time here. So got to say, this has been fantastic, and really huge thanks to Greg and the team at Sony. Maribeth put together an incredible presentation and really got to see a peek into their workflows, which is always rare these days in the industry. So thank you so much for that.
And if she watches a re-recording of this, I want to thank Maribeth for taking the time. It's invaluable, and I'm glad she could share that with everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.